The terrorist attacks against the United States on September 11, 2001, were the type of event that alters the course of human history. The role visual media played in recording, reporting, and processing this event is unprecedented. Everyday people, from professional photographers, journalists, and even astronauts, use their phones, cameras, and camcorders to capture the horrific reality of that day. On this 20th commemoration of that event, we find ourselves in 2021 reliving that visual record to help us continue to integrate what occurred into our collective global consciousness. This documentary seeks to add to that visual archive by sharing the photographs of one woman who, in the fall of 1999, visited the viewing platform at the top of the South Tower of the World Trade Center. My mother, Barbara Elwood, was living in Brooklyn, New York at the time, and I was living in Carmel, California. And the morning of 9/11, my mother got up and the world changed. So what we wanted to do is a little documentary here to showcase how two people who didn't lose anybody in the attack, but how our lives were severely impacted over the years and continue to be impacted as a result of the event. How in the world did you end up in Brooklyn when you have been a longtime resident and raised your family in Los Angeles?
I had a phone call in the spring of 1999 from my former boss at USC, John Gordon, who at that time had taken a job as provost at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. He had an opening in his office as academic affairs coordinator, and he asked me if I wanted to move to New York and take this position. So it was a complete surprise. And as you say, I was strictly an LA person up to that time, but I thought, what the heck? I always wanted to go to New York. I had a list of things on bucket list of things I wanted to see. So I just wrapped everything up in LA and put all my stuff in storage and sold my car. And I moved to Brooklyn in time for the fall semester to begin in September of 1999.
Mom, that was a pretty damn gutsy move of you to move across the United States to New York. I remember you telling us all at that time, and I still to this day think it was a pretty damn gutsy thing of you to do. Anyway, okay, so let's fast forward to the morning of 9/11. Tell me about what you were doing that morning.
Well, it was 8-ish in the morning. I was getting dressed. I was living across the street from Pratt in a co-op that I had purchased, and watching the TV news. And I see the videos of the crash into the North Tower. And we had a person in our office whose fiance worked in the 82nd floor of the North Tower. And I thought, oh my God, she's probably in her office. And so I went across the street into my office, and we found a little black and white TV to watch what was going on. In the meantime, the second plane had come along and crashed into the South Tower. So everybody was just really upset. And the staff person in our office hadn't heard from his fiance. And, we were all just really worried about what happened to her.
So this is the view from the South Tower looking towards Brooklyn and the Washington bridges over the East River. And I think the thing that we wanted to point out here is that Pratt literally is across the Brooklyn Bridge and kind of over in this little greenery area. And as the crow flies, it's really only 5 miles. So, you can see the edge of the building here that you were standing in. And then you can see the Brooklyn Bridge here that people walked across, including the woman that we're concerned about. But then you had clear shot from where you lived and where you worked all the way across the the East River to see the Twin Towers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were standing up on the tallest building on Pratt's campus, which was the main building, 4 stories tall. So from the roof, we had this just unobstructed observation of what was happening on the 2 towers, just 5 miles away across the East River. But as time went on, he actually received a phone call from her by noontime that day. She had missed the first subway from their home, which meant she was 10 minutes late getting to her office. And as she walked up out of the subway building, she looked up to her building, and there it was, all on fire. And she literally would have been in her office if she had caught that first subway. So the staff person in the office and his fiance were saved, but she couldn't call till noon because she had to walk all the way home, back across the Brooklyn Bridge to their apartment in lower Brooklyn.
When you were still getting dressed, you had called me and other members of the family to let us know that something was going on. I mean, I remember you called me at it was a little after 6 a.m, California time.
Yeah.
I picked up the phone and you basically just said, turn on the TV. You actually see the first tower fall, Mom?
Yeah, we saw the 2 towers fall while we were standing on the roof at Pratt. I didn't have any way to take pictures at that time because I didn't have a cell phone. And unfortunately, my camera had been stolen a couple of weeks before that. So I don't have any live pictures of that happening, but there's plenty of them in the history on video nowadays.
But the other thing too, I remember is shortly the first tower that went down had that huge communication tower up at the top. Also, they had a lot of communication in the actual building, including the Pratt server, right?
The Pratt server was in the basement of the whole complex. So we had no internet for several weeks. The staff, the IT staff, had to relocate Pratt's internet so that we could all communicate with the outside world.
I don't think you and I talked for 3 or 4 days after that happened. I mean, there was just no way to communicate. Everybody was freaking out. You had created this amazing picture, a 360-degree panorama that you had taken from the South Tower in the fall of 1999?
When I first got there. One of the things I started doing was going out every weekend and finding all the things I'd always wanted to see in New York, all the museums and etc. And one of the things I discovered was this observation tower on the South Tower. And it was very friendly, 360 degrees. So I had my good camera at that time, and I just walked around the observation deck at the top, which was right, across from the North Tower. So I took this whole 360-degree panorama view with a lot of pictures that eventually I overlaid to make that panel. When I put that thing above my desk in my office at Pratt, it was interesting the number of natives, New York natives, who would come in and look at that thing and tell me, oh, I've never been up to the New York, the observation tower, so I've never seen lower Manhattan that way. So it was an interesting panel for the New Yorkers too.
The weekend before 9/11, Labor Day weekend. And here we are now, we're filming now right after Labor Day weekend in 2021, 20 years later. But Chaz, my son, happened to be there, your grandson, your first grandson, happened to be there visiting a friend of his in the Hamptons. And then that weekend he came in to visit you. Yes. And so tell the story of what you guys did.
So we went up to the North Tower and had breakfast in the restaurant, which is called Windows on the World. And I was able to get the waiter to seat us next to a window where we could look out over the Hudson River and see the Verrazano Narrows Bridge and the Statue of Liberty and everything that was just down right below the tower. So that was an interesting observation opportunity. And when I printed those pictures, I put them in the mail to you. We subsequently found out you received that mail with the pictures of Chaz and me in the restaurant. What was it? The 6th.
So you mailed it from Brooklyn on the 6th of September, and I received it on the 11th. So basically what happened was you had called me the morning of 911. We then lost communications because the towers went down. I, like all other Americans, was glued to the TV till about 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And then I finally took a break and went outside and got the mail. And here was the envelope from you with pictures of you and Chaz sitting at the Windows on the World.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a bit of a shock. And I think it was about a month later, it was sometime in October, that I was able to come to New York and be with you. And we went down and we walked the pile.
I had dedicated an empty gallery and allowed just anybody who had pictures they wanted to share to come in and post them on the walls in that gallery. And other people who were missing loved ones or friends, they were posting pictures all over the city about asking, have you seen this person? I took many, many pictures after that for months of the desire and hope and wish to find somebody who'd been lost in that event. The other thing I did was I had a subscription to the New York Times, which was coming to my apartment daily. And of course, it had coverage. And I just couldn't bear to read the stuff after experiencing it. So I threw all of those newspapers, a whole month full of New York Times, into a banker's box. And I still have them here at home upstairs in my loft. I think we should save them as a family historical reference. I have never opened that box. So
one thing you had done when you first moved to Brooklyn is you started what you like to call the Babes, the Bar Adventures in Brooklyn. And this was your little email newsletter that you sent out. Reading from my mother's Babe newsletter the morning of September 11th at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. She says, I'm sitting in my office at Pratt Institute with a little portable TV tuned into the news of the aftermath of the explosions at the World Trade Center. Above my desk is a 360-degree panorama of photographs I took from the observation platform at the top of Tower 1 several months ago. It's hard to imagine that no one will ever see this view again. We have 4,000 students here at Pratt, many of whom live in Manhattan and New Jersey. They will not be able to get home tonight because all subways, bridges, and tunnels are closed, and we don't know for how long. The administration is making plans to accommodate them here on campus. Our health center is organizing a blood drive in connection with 3 other colleges in the immediate area here in Brooklyn. As the Red Cross says, blood supplies are depleted. The shock hasn't worn off yet. The news says that there were about 10,000 people in the Twin Towers this morning, and following the plane crash into the first tower, many firemen and officials were in the second tower. The repercussions of this tragedy will be felt by all of us for years, if not forever. Barbara writes at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time that day. The mayor and other officials have been on the news assessing the damage and number of lives lost. The firefighters union estimates that 200 firemen were in the building and have lost their lives. Additional buildings in lower Manhattan in the financial district have been on fire and some are destroyed. The stock exchange is completely closed. No traffic is being allowed into Manhattan, just traffic outbound. Pratt will be hosting many students and some faculty all night because they can't get home. Some of the faculty who live in lower Manhattan have banded together for a walk across the Manhattan Bridge to see if they can make it home. We have canceled all classes for tomorrow. She continues writing at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. After an otherwise clear and mild day, the sunset this evening was visible through the smoke of the buildings still burning in lower Manhattan. It was a beautiful but dreadful crimson and orange. This isn't the kind of adventure I wanted to have in New York. Really what happened after that is you had kind of committed to being at Pratt for 5 years with John, and then you decided you were going to come home early. So you stayed through the following, what was it, June?
Yeah, and the end of the spring semester. John left to come back to California late, also that spring semester. And by the time I made arrangements to sell my apartment and pack things up, it was July. So I arrived back in LA on July 2nd, 4th of July weekend in 2000. What would it have been?
2002.
2002. Yeah.
So what we want to talk about now is this 360-degree panorama you took from the South Tower in 1999, which we've gone to great lengths to scan the photos and to recreate this 360-degree view, because historically, I think it's important to have this documented. And I think it's just really an interesting visual archive of what the view from the towers looked like, because that view will never ever exist again. So basically this is a recreation of the board that you had in your office.
Mm-hmm.
So, what you had done is you had taken your pictures and you juxtapositioned them and matched up the horizon. And again, you had taken
overlaid them.
Yeah, you tried very hard to stand in the same horizontal juxtaposition so that you could match up the horizon across these photos, and it ended up working really, really great. So tell us what we're looking at here.
Well, down in besides the North Tower on the left, right below that, you see that little green patch. That's the gate to the tunnel that goes, the Holland Tunnel, I think it is, that goes underneath to New Jersey on the other side of the Hudson River.
I think the thing to note here is that you are taking this photo from the South Tower. So the North Tower, which was the one that was the first hit by American Airlines Flight 11 at 8:46 in the morning, which is when you saw it on TV that morning. That was the tower that was first hit. It was the second tower to go down, but it was the first tower to be hit by that plane. And again, you were concerned because you had your staff member's fiance who worked on the 82nd floor of that tower. So this is a close-up then of the view from that vantage point, where you're looking up to Midtown, where you can see the Empire State Building here in the center, and the various other buildings, all around, with the Hudson on the left over here, and then the East River on the right. So this is the view from the South Tower looking towards Brooklyn and the Washington bridges over the East River. And I think the thing that we wanted to point out here is that Pratt literally is across the Brooklyn Bridge and kind of over in this little greenery area. And as the crow flies, it's really only 5 miles. So, you can see the edge of the building here that you were standing in. And then you can see the Brooklyn Bridge here that people walked across, including, you know, the woman that you were concerned about. But then you were able to, you had clear shot from where you lived and where you worked all the way across the, you know, the East River to see the Twin Towers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were standing up on the tallest building on Pratt's campus, which was the main building, 4 stories tall. So from the roof, we had this just unobstructed observation of what was happening on the 2 towers, just 5 miles away across the East River.
Yeah, and the other reason I think that's important to note here is that really for months and months, you were getting smoke wafting over from,
Smoke blew our direction. You're right. Every night, nighttime mostly, because the place, the site where the towers fell was smoldering and on fire actually for months afterwards. And it was a very acrid smell because imagine the contents of that smoke. Staten Island ferry took off. It began to be the area where all of the people who came in with their boats from the New Jersey side, which is what you're looking at now, they began to row across the river and try to pick up people who had abandoned their homes and were on the shore down there and needed to be rescued. So this is around the corner going up the Hudson River. The view of New Jersey immediately across from both the towers, from the South Tower and the North Tower. And with New Jersey in the background, I think it's actually Hoboken right there.
Yeah, and as I recall, I believe it was the biggest boat rescue mission ever accomplished in the United States, that, you know, those days and weeks after. And I think what people don't realize is that, you know, there were people that were stuck down. I mean, if we go back to the previous one, there were people that were stuck down here at Battery Park. I mean, there were other people that were kind of in the financial district that were able to get to the Brooklyn Bridge, who, including, you know, your friend's fiance, who were able to, you know, exit that whole area of Lower Manhattan over the Brooklyn Bridge. But there were a whole bunch of people, thousands of people, that were stuck down at Battery Park, and the only way they could get out was by boat. And so there was this huge boat lift that literally came from this whole area of New Jersey. And as you can see, there's many docks and many boats. And yeah, so I think this is an amazing picture that you caught here that shows, you know, how this area was just able to respond to that emergency. So if we go to this next one, this is the final of your series. It's completing this 360-degree panorama, because here you're looking at the other side of that North Tower. And go ahead and talk about this a little bit here, Mom.
Well, this was farther up the Hudson River, and of course that's New Jersey on the other side over there. I didn't know much about New Jersey, but I realized that the shore, of course, was the important interface between the 2 states. And the Hudson River itself, of course, was one of the major rivers in the state of New York and in the United States, but it played a huge was a huge factor in the rescue and of people who escaped from these 2 towers.
Well, and then when the picture on the right is looking straight down from where you were at what was then the World Financial Center, which had that beautiful glass atrium, which was called the Winter Garden
atrium.
Yeah. And you know, those buildings were severely damaged. And in fact, that glass atrium was completely destroyed during the attack. And I think you said that whole area has been rebuilt at this point. But the other thing too that I love about the picture on the left is, you know, this 360-degree panorama that you did is really, you know, I don't know how many other pictures there are of the tops of these buildings that were left, you know, And you know, these buildings are gone. And when I look at these buildings and I see that top of the building, it just, you know, it's amazing to me. So
Yeah.
anyway,
I had always hoped to go back to New York to see the reconstruction these many years later, but I'm never going to get back there again.
well, and the other thing too, I wanted to recognize is, you know, here I am in my life, a visual anthropologist. So basically I make my living documenting cultural reality through cameras. And you really were the person in my life to start that. And this is a really great example of you thinking visually, Mom. I mean, you had the wherewithal to get yourself up to the observation deck and document this view, not knowing how important it would be years later, given that those towers now don't exist. So yeah, just, I feel like it's in my genes to have become the visual documentary person that I am. And here we are making this little video. And yeah, so.
Contemporary visual anthropology.
You were a visual anthropologist before you even knew it, Mom.
Yeah. Happy to do it.
All right. Well, so hey, that's our presentation of Barbara Elwood's panorama of the World Trade Center prior to the destruction in 2001. Bye, Mom.
Bye. Thanks for doing this.
All right. See you later.
Bye.